Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We're your hosts, Adriana and May, and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
we talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
If you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday. And on today's episode, we want to wish everyone a happy New Year's Eve. If you are listening to this live, it is currently New Year's Eve. And of course, as the new year approaches, goal setting and casting that vision language is all in the air. Everyone has these big dreams, these big goals, which is very exciting. And we will definitely dive into that in a future episode. But today we want to put a pause on those and do a little bit of a studio update as we look back for the whole year. Because really, before you can set a goal for the future, whether it's in personal life, in your business, with your art making, it really is always good to look back at where you've been, what's worked well, reflect on what you've accomplished, what went well, what went wrong, how you want to move forward strategically and intentionally so you can be more informed about what those goals are and where you want to go. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I definitely echo that, that it's good to look back. Also, it's interesting to look not just at the previous year, which is what we're going to do, but Um, if you keep record of these throughout the years, it's super interesting to look back at even previous years from that and also to see how things you may have backburnered in other years kind of come back if it's important enough. So that's always interesting to look at. But as it relates to today's episode, some of the areas that we're going to be looking at is our marketing and exposure efforts, art making and income streams, personal goals, and some other miscellaneous wins. We're also going to be discussing our overall word or theme for 2024 and how that went. And yeah, we'll talk about some of the things that we are proud of for the year.
Yes. And before we dive in to do that, I just want to remind all of our listeners that if you want to take a look back at your year and plan ahead for 2025, we encourage you to head on over to levelupartist.com and check out our Level Up Your Year PDF, where we walk you through each of these sections, really reflecting on your year and planning ahead so you can do your annual check-in with us. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into looking back at 2024. Adriana, let's go ahead and start with marketing and exposure. How did that go in 2024 for you? What did that look like?
Normally I like us for us to start these things like with some of our wins and challenges, but this one I actually want to start with a challenge that I encountered in 2024. And in case you haven't heard any of our previous episodes where we're going to this, so I did suffer a spinal injury that affected both my business and my personal life as well. And it was an injury. Like we're okay right now, as of this recording. May need surgery in the future, but for right now, we're okay. And it seriously impacted my mobility and my ability to make art in the first place. Like part of what was affected was my painting arm. Come on, why couldn't it be the other one? But anyways,
Of course,
it
of
took
all things.
months. I know. I'm like, come on, could have been the other side, but that's all right. It is what it is. So it took months of medical care, chiropractic sessions, physical therapy before I could paint on canvas or murals or do sculptures or anything like that. So with some of the extra time, I kind of started to make some changes to my art business, and part of that involved my marketing and exposure. Um, so some of the things that I did throughout 2024. So I did have a renewed focus on, partnerships, especially, part of that network that was supporting me through the healing process. So part of that included, being able to delegate a little bit more, do a little bit more of interactions. At first, most of them were online, of course, because it was even hard to leave the house. So there's that. But some of them became more one-on-one with other art professionals, folks that do events that are related or adjacent to art, as well as other art professionals and other artists. We always love those. Um, And previous to the injury, I did get a chance to do an artist residency and met a lot of artists, a lot of which are teaching artists and professors at different universities. So that was super cool. But yeah, those were some of the things that took place. Again, some of them were impacted or had to be on pause for a while I was recovering. But I kind of kept, going on with some of those goals. One that definitely continued to be backburnered, unfortunately, in 2024, which more on that on what we're doing about it in the episode about 2025 goals. But one of them was regarding the poor YouTube channel that I kind of put on pause back in 2023. Intended to get back to it to 2024. And while I did some strides, um, the execution of said I don't want to give it away, but the execution of said efforts will bear fruit in 2025, not 2024. And I am
Very
okay with that.
ambiguous
It's
way
it's
of
okay.
talking about it.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to say too much. Um, not yet, not yet. And then as it relates to exposure, I did want to connect with more collectors and art professionals, especially outside of, my local area. Some of it was like in terms of exhibits. I wanted to do paintings and ceramics together, and I did get a chance to do that, which was awesome. Got to paint more murals, which of course that was part of it. Again, did the art residency. I would love to make more, so that was a challenge, but again, injury kind of gets in the way. Um, and especially when you don't know when you're going to be okay again, which that was the case at the time, then it makes it harder to plan residencies, which are so far ahead of time, the applications a lot of times. And it was like, I don't want to apply to this, maybe get it, and then possibly decline it because I don't know if I'll be able to go. Anyway, so missed the boat on a few, but that's okay. Like this how it works anyway. Um, and then another thing in regards to this, like I did get to kind of like get exposed to a lot of more different people throughout this process. Like for example, I did get to do a mural for a client who found me through a mural that I did for the city of Raleigh. And, just kind of like it bore fruit to be able to do, those connections and continue to do the work again, even as I was recovering from an injury and had to get assistance to come on site and help me out with, my physical limitations at the time. Still pushed through all that and still met a lot of my goals in these areas. Not everything, but that is okay. That's life, isn't it? Make a plan, hope for the best.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like kind of similar with my 2024 is we always have a plan at the beginning of the year of like, this is all the things I'm going to do. There's never going to be a roadblock coming in my way. And then
Uh,
middle of the year or towards the end of the year, you say, oh, that plan, that was a great idea. I feel like one way that I can relate to that a bit was for 2024 in the past, when setting these goals, I think a lot about exposure in terms of group exhibitions, solo exhibitions, physically having my work out in the community, which wasn't necessarily a huge focus of mine this year, like intentionally, right? So if there was an open call, I would maybe apply for it, but I didn't put that pressure on myself that like I have to apply for every opportunity even if I didn't feel connected to it or if I didn't feel like I was ready. I kind of allowed myself that option. So I did exhibit my work at a handful of amazing galleries or public spaces, which was super great. But I think this year I really focused more on really that work-life balance, whatever that may be, which for a majority of this year was also balancing my corporate job with my art studio business and a personal life. So ultimately, it did result in less physical art making than I think I had planned at the beginning of the year. But ultimately, I found that that was really what I needed during this season of my life. A huge win from a marketing exposure standpoint was that it really didn't, the lower art making time really did not impact my business as terribly as I thought it would be. And I think the biggest reason for that was because of my continued focus on digital marketing and especially my newsletter, which I think was really the biggest win for me this year is one, continuing to grow my newsletter organically. I'm not running any targeted digital ads. I'm not doing any promotions or really like opt-ins, like get this free PDF when you sign up for my newsletter. I don't do any of that. Not saying I never will, but it's really focused on meeting people in person, meeting them at events, and getting them on my newsletter that way, which there were like 3 to 4 experiences, especially in the past couple months, where I feel like that marketing wheel that we talk a lot about on the podcast and through our Level Up Artists PDFs online, like it really worked out perfectly where it's okay, I had a previous collector who bought a print of mine back in 2020. By buying a print, they signed up for my newsletter, and then they have been getting my newsletter basically every week, every other week for the past 4 years. And then they came back to my studio a few weeks ago because they're like, we have your print. We love your work. We remember this one series that you had. And now we've moved from an apartment to a house. They're both, this young couple is in a very different financial position than they were 4 years ago. And now they want to commission a piece based off of a series that they've seen, which I feel like is kind of every artist's dream of, oh, this opportunity came out of nowhere, but really reflecting on, no, that was there because of the marketing path that they were led along and joined, like, I don't know, welcomed into my world of seeing what I'm still doing rather than, oh, here's a $40 print and then you never talk to them again, right? So yeah, I feel like that's been a huge win is really like seeing the direct result of those marketing efforts when it feels like you're just like shouting into the void sometimes, or just people very intentionally saying, oh, well, I only came to First Friday because I got your newsletter about it this week. I would have totally forgot that it was First Friday. I'm like, that's a huge compliment. Whether they end up buying something from me or not, just the fact that they're coming out to a local arts event because I told them about it is like a huge win. And for things like when I launched product this year, I launched a coloring book a few weeks ago, which has been very exciting and successful as a launch, but having the newsletter to launch that with has been great. And also it's kind of a glimpse into the later times in my career when I won't have a public facing studio. It just makes me very excited about that. I guess the other wins from an exposure standpoint, again, going more the digital marketing side, I've really been leaning into posting on LinkedIn more. Right now, feel like I'm just putting content out similar to Instagram and Facebook. But I definitely see the benefits of it and I'm excited to capitalize on it and use it more strategically moving forward, which we'll go into in a later episode. But yeah, just utilizing LinkedIn, I think, has been a big win. And also creating video montages. I've found that from like kind of videos that summarize an event or day in the life, especially on Instagram, those have really been resonating with people. Not necessarily even through like the analytics on the platform, but I found that like a lot of my studio visitors will mention those to me or when I'm talking to other artists. That's like one of the biggest things that people like talk to me about, which I see as a huge win, which I feel like a big part of that too was also made easier for me by just buying a few more like tripods to have around. So this is my big tip for people. If you're looking in any element of your marketing to take more pictures, to do more video marketing, find like, especially if you're using your phone for most of the content, which I do, like find a tripod that you like and then truly buy like 3 of them if they're within budget. Like I have one at my apartment at home, one stays in my car all the time, and then one stays in my studio. Because nothing's more frustrating than if you're like, oh, I'm going to this art event or like setting up my booth, and then you realize, oh, I forgot my tripod. You're like, no, there's always one in my car if you want to do a time lapse, if you want to do whatever. So that's made it super, super easy. But To wrap it up, I think from a challenge standpoint, from a marketing exposure, is honestly similar to what it was this time last year. And I think it's always going to be a challenge for me, but one that I am working on is figuring out what and how I can delegate some of my digital marketing. I think one, because I just love doing it. I definitely see it as part of the work that I make in terms of like how I talk about my work, the tone, but it is delegatable in terms of if you compare digital marketing content to physically making the work, one of them you can delegate way easier than the other. So I'm still trying to figure out how to do that, what I'm comfortable with, and still trying to maintain that intimate connection with my audience to ensure that it's my voice, while also decreasing the workload because as our businesses continue to grow, and as opportunities come up, time is limited. So that'll definitely be a challenge that I'm remaining conscious of in the new year. But we'll see how that goes. But from a art marketing or art making and income stream shift, Adriana, how has your 2024 shifted from this time last year?
So when it comes to art making, of course, again, some goals were met, some goals sort of kind of. Uh, the one of the goals that I had for from the previous year that I wanted to carry on was regarding murals, and that's still a big focus, of course. So I wanted to be able to do bold designs, execute at a larger scale. I even wanted to be able to do some murals that would have a participatory community component. And this is something that I love about us goal setting and how these things can come to life because that's exactly what happened. I did several murals that had, kids and adults paint on them. Some of them had an event that tied to it. So the one on Moore Square comes to mind, the one for the town of Kenley come to mind, where there was a part where the community could actually come in and help out. And then it happened, and then I would finish it up and then we would install it. So that was super awesome. I want to call it the power of manifesting, although that's part of it. But I was very excited to see that come to life again, despite some of the other limitations I was facing. One that did not pan out the way I hoped based on what I had planned was residency. So I did do one in early 2024. So that was awesome. Loved it. Wanted to pack my 2024 with residencies. Did not pan out, and that is okay, right? So hopefully in future years, et cetera, I'm going to be taking a look again at some of the calls and, applications and things like that and see what can come up in future years because there was a lot of it that I really enjoyed when I did it. Having less interruptions and from business life and also personal life, just having that concentrated amount of time. And we'll talk about this more in the goals episode, but there are some changes coming to some of the work that I do. And the residency was like a perfect little pocket in time, almost like I don't know, like almost like a little time capsule situation that I could work on some of those things. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But at least as of 2024, at least I got one in the books. And that's better than none. So I will take it. And then as it relates to income streams. So I did have less of a focus on teaching and services for artists. And I still wanted to do workshops, but I didn't want it to be that much of a focus. And that's exactly what I did. So that was good. That freed up some time for some of the other things that I wanted to focus on, aka murals. Um, and I did work on some ideas for an online workshop that I could do that would be like pre-recorded and things like that. But then I actually backburnered it because I kind of got lost in some of the detail of how much of that I wanted to be hands-on or more like demos or techniques, and how much of that would be more of like the strategic planning of it and things like that. So that got backburnered. May or may not come back again. Future episode, we'll talk about that. But as it relates to the goal that I set and how I did it, backburnered it. And that's okay. I mean, this is why at least I like doing these kind of episodes because it's a great reminder that, yeah, we set the goal at the beginning and it's okay to change our mind. Like, yes, we need to have self-discipline to carry out and execute on the goals we set intentionally, but it's also okay to be like, no, this is not, priorities change throughout the year. So make a conscientious effort, however you say that word, make an intentional effort towards the goal, but also be willing, and this is something I encourage everybody to do, that we encourage you guys to do, at least at least every 6 months, every 3 months is ideal too, to be like, okay, this is still on the docket and I keep pushing it down the to-do list. Is it that important? Like, do I still really want to do this? Could this really make a change? So that's a lot of what I had to do this year. Um, for example, with France. So this is one where the intention, the plan, and the execution did not match up, and I'm not gonna give myself crap over it. I'm just gonna move with it. I wanted to do prints. I wanted to figure out how to do like some sort of quarterly release. I have sold prints off my website, not like a ton, but I have. And the feedback I've gotten is always positive when I hear back, which is fine because it is a third party that does fulfillment. I haven't gotten negative feedback though, which is also awesome. But it's one of those like I haven't really pushed for it, and it just kind of helped me, like as I was like looking at my efforts in terms of marketing, I was like, would I like how many prints? I'll put it to you this way. I started like asking myself throughout the year, how many prints would I have to sell to equal one mural? And what amount of effort would I have to put for each? Because if the answer is about the same, then in terms of effort and content and marketing, my answer is going to be I'm going to do a mural instead. Like instead of trying to sell like 100 prints to not even make what one mural makes. So anyway, so there was a lot of that going on again of like, here's the goal. Is that goal still as important, or is this other goal like kind of knock that one back into the back burner side of things? And that's what happened with a lot of them. So yeah, murals, a lot of my goals were about the types of businesses and institutions I wanted to collaborate with. And luckily, I'm happy to report that a lot of them were yes, yes, yes. There's still a few on my list that we'll talk about more in 2025 that I want to go, I want to collaborate with and work with, but a lot of the ones that I had for 2024. Luckily, I was phew, able to work on one that did not happen, though, that was on the list for 2024. And that's okay. We tried. We actually tried. I even partnered up with other artists to try to make this happen, and it did not happen in 2024, and that is okay. Was we were going to try to partner with an Airbnb to paint at their location and do basically like an artist gathering of sorts. This is the same group I met in 2023 in the Dominican Republic. So there's 12 of us. Uh, troublemakers. So we were hoping to do a reunion in 2024 and paint at an Airbnb. Did not pan out. Our hostess had some issues with the wall, and we had to firmly and lovingly say, we are not handy people. I mean, I'm sure we're handy enough, but we are not trained in spackling rough, like literally raw drywall and taping it and putting the spackling stuff on it and then like 17 layers of primer. Like there's so much that goes on after those gypsum boards are up or whatever the walls are made out of that we were like, no, we need a ready painted wall. So that one was one that we were like, so when that wall's ready, let us know. So that got pushed, into the 2025 territory. Which is fine, which is fine. There's a lot of logistics involved in that kind of endeavor. So yeah, anyways, that's why I'm like, on this episode, I'm like reporting some of the yes, it did happen. No, that one got backburnered intentionally, and no, that one didn't go according to plan. But we can revise it for the new year and see if it's still something that we want to go after. How
Yeah,
about
and it
you?
sounds like maybe even like a blessing in disguise too. Like
With
imagine
some of
if
them,
you
yes.
didn't or they didn't tell you that it was that kind of long, you got there and just had to like make the
Yeah.
most of it, or yeah, it's also
Yeah.
a good practice in communicating boundaries and expectations on types of
It would have been
clients,
so awkward otherwise.
right?
Showing up and being like, that wall. Nope.
Yeah,
Bye.
which hearing like or having plans shift like that is never easy. I think all of our listeners, and we can definitely relate to that feeling if you're like, okay, but this would be so great if only XYZ things were different. But just
Hmm.
having to accept that maybe it was a blessing in disguise, not saying never, just not right now.
Hmm.
Because yeah, to your point, plans change, things change, and opens up your schedule for other opportunities that might be more in line with where you want to go. So fingers crossed for you. That'll be
Fingers,
exciting.
fingers crossed.
I feel like for me, from an art making and income stream standpoint in 2024, like I said, I feel like it wasn't a huge art making year for me, which again sounds strange having a public facing art studio. But I think I was a lot more intentional with when I was making work, and I'm super excited about kind of the seeds that I planted with myself this year that are still growing and still going to evolve. So really pivoting just my acrylic paintings into slightly more sculptural pieces. So doing well, one, circle panels. I love circle panels, I realized. So exploring that a bit more. Using light and shadow as part of my wall sculptures in different ways. And then evolving that also into more tabletop sculpture experiments. All of those three things I feel like still are not necessarily like finessed, if that makes sense. They still feel like in the experiment stage yet. Like I'm still understanding what does this language look like for me and what do I want it to say? How do I feel about where they are? So it's definitely still in that experiment evolution, but very exciting. And so the other thing from an art making standpoint that I think was a huge win for me this year was that creating mural and Procreate mock-ups. I got started on them, definitely planned on being more evolved and comfortable with the
Mhm.
technology than I am right now. However, we're not gonna harp on it. I'm getting my systems figured out. So I did get an iPad earlier this year with the software, the tools that I need. I did do the Hunter mural this past spring using the mock-up that I created with the iPad. And I have been trying to find that balance between disconnecting with pen and paper, which is my go-to like grounding art making process, is like give me a Sharpie and dot paper. And that's typically how I start most of my paintings or series or mural designs. So I'm trying to bridge the gap between that and using technology as a tool, which again, I think everyone is so different. Obviously, there's a learning curve with the technology, but people also use the technology differently. Like some people start from scratch on the iPad, some people, okay, do partial pen and paper, and then once they get to a certain design point, then they bring it into the iPad to keep developing it as you're finessing colors and composition and things like that. So I'm still figuring out what my best method for using it is, but we got started, so I call that a win. And overall, from a art making standpoint, I think the biggest theme of what I've been exploring is just like 3D space. Whether it's my studio space, whether it's sculptures, paintings that come off the wall, murals obviously have a big impact on this space. And so I'm, yeah, really leaning into what does that mean for me and my work. So very exciting. The other big win, which is art making related, is I launched a new product this year, my coloring book, which I'm super excited about. It's been a project that I've been thinking about honestly for like over 2 years. So I'm glad that I was finally able to prioritize it, get it launched, and it really taught me a lot about that process of publishing. Like the mental launch of a new product is also a big hurdle to overcome. And really realizing that oftentimes these launches don't actually take as much time as we think they will, but it feels like this like big weight on our shoulders of no, like I don't have time to do that yet. I don't have time to do that yet. And then when you sit down and actually do the thing, you say, well, if I would have known it would have only taken me X number of hours, I could have done this 6 months ago. So and I think people can probably relate to that a lot in terms of whether it's social media content, a newsletter, a sketch for a new painting, like finalizing a contract, whatever it is, it becomes this like weight bigger than ourselves to where we're like, I just don't have time. I don't have time. And then you finally check it off your to-do list, and then it's just a huge weight off your shoulders. So that was a big lesson for me as well of don't put off those ideas that you have. Just see what happens because you'll probably feel a lot better afterwards. And then finally, from an income stream standpoint, um, this has definitely been an interesting year from an income stream standpoint for me. As I've shared on previous episodes, the biggest shift is being that in August, I was laid off from my corporate job working in digital marketing. So transparently, my art business and my personal income have always been separate. Since the day I started my art business, I opened a bank account that, okay, I have X amount that I'm starting with, and every month, if I'm buying supplies, it comes out of that account. If I'm making a sale, it's going into that account. And knock on wood, it's been self-sustaining ever since, which is very exciting. But shifting the mindset with income streams is a lot different now that, okay, this is your sole income stream rather than always reinvesting money back into the business, which I'm very thankful that I did that for the past few years. But I think the thing I'm most excited about and proud of is the systems that were put in place so that when I was laid off from my corporate job, it didn't feel as scary because I had already been tracking the income streams of the art business, which is one thing that I highly suggest to people, all of our listeners here, whether you're just starting off your business or if your personal and art business finances are a little muddied. My biggest advice would be have a separate bank account for your art expenses, for all of your sales to go into, to just keep them separate. And each quarter, depending on where you live, where you're listening from, in North Carolina, you need to every quarter file income taxes for your sales. And so when I do that every quarter, I also track or look at my sales for that quarter and categorize them by income stream. So it'll be, oh, this was payment for a mural. This was someone buying an art product or an original art piece, or I got paid to do a teaching event, which, of course, at the beginning of our art businesses, I did not have 12 income streams to explore. But even with something small, being like, okay, they bought $40, someone bought $40 worth of art products for the entire quarter. Over the past 3 months, it was $40. That might feel insignificant to track if you're saying, okay, well, that seems like such a small portion, or I only made $200 in the past 3 months. What's the point of tracking it? I can count on my hand the number of sales I've made. But then you can see from a percentage standpoint where that income is going. And over time, you get to watch that percentage grow. You get to watch those numbers grow. And it makes it super, super clear where that money is coming from. So, looking at that for 2024, for me, I think some of the big wins have been seeing the percentage increase of income from teaching. So I've loved doing in-person teaching gigs, mainly focused around digital marketing for artists. And then also creating custom signage. So, a local nonprofit who built a new building was looking for wall signage for that building to highlight some of their big donors. And so doing an ongoing custom signage creation for them has been an income stream that I never really expected, but has been super, super wonderful when looking at 24. So again, neither of these are really traditional art making. They're kind of like art adjacent income streams. But the fact of having that tracked has been super, super helpful. And I'm excited to see how those income streams in particular continue to grow or potentially pivot. So, yeah. But
Yeah,
with
but that's the name of the game, isn't it? When it comes
we're
to
always
having an
pivoting.
art business or just a creative business in general. I know some of the folks that listen to us do music or do freelancing, and graphic design and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, pivot is, I think that comes in the job description of having a creative business. That's for
Yeah.
sure. Well,
I think especially for, which we'll dive in a little bit, my word for 2024 was flexibility. And definitely from that income stream standpoint, it's like, okay, that is textbook definition of your income stream is not what you thought it would be, but we're staying flexible and we're pivoting as the year evolves. But from like a personal goals and other wins standpoint, Adriana, what have been some of your wins in 2024?
Um, so on 2024, some of the some of the goals that I had, one of them was in regards to the potential of moving to the Asheville area in the next few upcoming years. And of course, the hurricane got in the way of that, which of course, super unfortunate for the folks that live there. So, recovery efforts ongoing, and we wish everybody well. And I will eventually join you guys, but this kind of put a little bit of a delay in my plans of moving there, which is fine. But that was one of the goals that I had in mind, was to make efforts towards, a future move there. So not canceled, kind of backburnered essentially. So that was one thing, of course, that popped up. A few of the other goals that I had was, being able to have more time to paint outdoors and create mural designs. I did have an increased focus on things like working on digital designs and trying to figure out like, and more on this on the 2025 goals episode, but I did have throughout the year this kind of like back back of your mind kind of like recurring thought popping up of how could I make my murals and my paintings and my sculptures even more related to each other. And that's always been a goal, so definitely a 2024 goal that will continue. But there was more of that happening. So I was using, digital drawing or digital sketching to explore that a little bit further. Anyways, figured I'd mention that because you were talking about having an iPad and stuff. Um, so we'll see what happens. I do think it's a win, when it comes to that. I did have more wins in terms of scheduled rest days and staycations, part of it forced by my injury. Yeah. It's yay, boo. But at the
Boo.
same time,
But
that's
also
okay. That's okay.
good.
There
Good.
was less, it was also like a good reminder of like our bodies, there's so much we can do to them, but and there's ways we can strengthen our bodies and make ourselves healthier. But at the end of the day, an injury can happen to anybody for whatever reason. It could just be like somebody bumps into you and you bust your bum and now you have something broken. Like it doesn't even necessarily have to be your fault. Like mine, there's like a genetic component involved, so nothing I did either.
Right.
But it was one of those like good reminders of, and that's actually something that I put into place, something that wasn't, you could say it was kind of a soft goal that I put into 2024 in regards to having, more rest days and things like that. But it became more of a solid goal post injury of like, I was thinking of it this way. I'm not going to take a mural job that I don't think will either I will enjoy or move forward or enrich my portfolio, even if the pay is good, because I can't trade off what it's going to do to my body, you
Right.
know? And murals are very physical. Same thing with some of the sculpture plans that I had for 2024 that I had to table for a big chunk of the year. I couldn't even carry a bag of clay. Like,
Right.
and I need to carry bags of clay to make ceramic sculptures. Hello. I can't just like be having somebody carry them around for me all the time. I mean, I don't have that kind of money to have a minion. So
Or
it
even
did
going to
turn
like
into a
grab
lot of,
things out of the kiln and stuff too. And then you did all this work and you would go to grab it, but then your arm gives out and then
uh-huh. And
it's
then you
fragile
break it
too.
or you can't lean
Yeah.
over and then you have to, and it's not, don't depend on other people. I mean, do lean on other people and like give back. So that part's not a problem. I'm sure if I was like, Jackie, can you like reach in there and like just grab it? Like I can't, like that would have been fine. But it became one of those, what am I trading? Like in terms of body tear and wear, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So there was a lot more of that. Like I said, it went from a soft goal of don't overwork, Adriana, because I did a lot of that in 2023. You need to do a lot more rest to, you have to, as per your medical professional, you have to set some of these limitations at least for several months. And I did, and I was good about it. But even as I started to quote unquote get back to normal, it kind of like gave me a little bit of a reluctance of like, okay, certain things I'm just going to evaluate a little bit differently of like, could this make my injury come back? So I'm not going to push it too much, but I'm also not going to stop making it work. I'm also not going to stop doing murals. Like it just meant I had to do some adjustments. Like maybe don't grab that big crate of paint. Could you get a cart instead? And the answer is yes. I got a cart and I got a a cart system that like breaks into pieces so I can carry like more manageable weight at a time, right? Instead of trying to do it all at once. So that's kind of how that like showed itself up in 2024. But yeah, I would have to say it was overall most of the goals that I had for 2024 in terms of, personal life and a few other wins, like they took place. I just had to make some adjustments. So it is what it is.
There you go. Pivoting, pivoting, pivoting. And yes, I think especially
Always.
from a physical health standpoint, whether it's an injury to your point that was like genetic or whether it's an accident that happened, I think most people, or even just getting a terrible head cold when you have a bad deadline, is like most of us can relate to that feeling of you don't realize how healthy and able you are until you aren't. And it really does
Exactly.
make you very appreciative of when you can get some mobility back or be back to as you were before. It just really makes you more appreciative and conscious of those limitations. And that if we don't take care of our physical and mental health, then ultimately it will not
Nobody
go
else
well.
will. Yeah, nobody else will. That's on us.
Right. It's like if you don't, there's some saying that's basically like if you don't take the rest, your body will force you to rest.
Oh yeah,
Um, which, yes,
100%.
very different. But I would say for me this year, from a physical fitness standpoint, I've had a lot of wins, which have been great. I started running again, which I'm not normally considering myself a runner. I love doing like HIIT workouts, gym classes, weightlifting. But I started running again this summer, and it really has been helpful, especially from a mental health standpoint, which I think has been the biggest win for me, especially for the past few months, is recognizing like, yes, I want to get stronger. I want to have more functional fitness in terms of being able to be out on a ladder for murals for hours and hours a day, or even just like standing and painting in the studio for that long. Like it takes a wear and tear in your body, in your lower back. But really focusing on not the kind of like how I look as a result of working out, but really focusing on connecting with my body and with my mind has been the biggest win of a lot of the workout systems that I've put in place. Another one being I've done yoga more this year. I haven't been as consistent as I want to be, but having access to it again and also having that as part of my regular workout routine, doing hot yoga in the mornings, has been super awesome. It's definitely challenging, and very humbling, but it's also that mental calm, and kind of a grounding exercise where it really reminds you of, I don't know, like this is who we are as humans. It doesn't have to be this like super intense, screaming while weightlifting intense zone that some forms of fitness are, which are great. But so yeah, yoga's been great. And then I also have been incorporating line dancing into my routine recently, which may sound kind of silly to people, but I'm absolutely obsessed with it. It's basically increasing again that mind body connection. It's very humbling going and learning these new line dances and then practicing them, because sometimes I feel like I'm stumbling around and look very silly, but I think that's good for me, to be honest. Like I love being a beginner again in new processes. Plus, the extrovert in me loves going out and meeting new people. It's just a fun, positive environment. And I mean, there are studies upon studies of saying like how good dancing is for physical and mental health. So I've loved incorporating that into my routine again. Other wins that I've had, I feel like kind of again from that grounding and just feeling more human in a way, which again sounds like a weird phrase, but I'm such a type A structured, goals oriented person, which is one thing I love about myself. But I feel like a big wins this year have been really challenging during like honest, raw, tough moments and being able to lean into more emotions through journaling and just like writing to release emotions, getting that sense of grounding during charged moments and channeling it in a productive way. Um, where now I feel like I'm able to like connect with that side of myself more. So, although it was not an easy or graceful year by any means, especially even leaving a corporate job and adjusting to that lifestyle and the mindset shift, I've learned how to really tap into that, lean into um, the instability, but trusting that things will be okay and challenging myself also to think more expansively than minimizing opportunities for what's ahead. So definitely a lot of mindset growth and emotional growth and hopefully bettering my line dancing skills because right now it's pretty bad, but we're getting better. We're getting better.
Oh.
Up next, we're going to talk about what our one word theme was for 2024 and what we are most proud of ourselves for this year. But first, let's go ahead and take a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by our Level Up Artist resources.
We understand that life as a modern artist can be both exciting and overwhelming. Plus, there's a lot of information out there, but what do visual artists actually need?
We've spent countless hours of trial and error, weeding through tons of information to find the gold so that you don't have to waste time going down those endless rabbit holes.
We created a library of PDF resources with bonus videos that cover everything from artist documents to exhibition prep, social media to technology, sales strategies, and artist mindset, several templates, and more.
Ready to get started? Head on over to levelupartist.com/shop to level up your creative career today. Welcome back, everyone. So, Adriana, what was your overall theme or word for 2024, and how did it go now that we're looking back?
Yeah, so in looking back, I also looked at the 2023 word. So I always find it interesting to kind of see the progression. 2023 was sustainable expansion, and then 2024, my big literally my word for the year was focused growth. And with this, I intended it to be not just, oh, I want to have bigger this, bigger that, like, not just everything bigger and better type situation. It was more like, no, I'm actually going to focus on specific areas of my business. And I'm okay if I back burner the rest of it as necessary, as long as I'm laser focused on certain areas. And that's exactly what I did. Now, some of them, as we discussed, did not pan out as I hoped, like the artist residencies. But again, at least I did one. But other things like the mural side of things, that definitely worked out. I would have loved to make more, but again, pesky injury got in the way. But I did do a lot of them, so that was super exciting, and I'm of course looking forward to doing more. One of the ones that I did back burner was I wanted to create even more strategic partnerships than I did with art professionals, especially like art galleries, consultants, and curators. Like I actually wanted to put a little bit more of intentional effort into it. So maybe next year or maybe 2025, I should say. But 2024, I was like, again, there was like that. I did have that big time period of I don't know if I'm going to be able to do artwork in the same way. Will I have the same amount of production that I did that would be sustainable for me to have a gallery relationship with? Because if it does well, they're going to be like, I want 10 more. And if my answer is, it might be a year before you get 10 more, that's not going to work. They're a business too. So, anyway, so that got put on hold a little bit, but we'll see about, following year. Another thing was regarding the exhibitions and sharing my art journey in more intentional ways online and in person. So that did take place as part of the goal. So that was super exciting. Do I want to do more of that? Of course, but I'm satisfied with the results. I was going to say, I'm like, a lot of 2024 for me wasn't like, it was more like meeting goals as much as possible as opposed to smashing through the goals and like just going above and beyond and everything. But honestly, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, obviously I have the luxury of looking back and being like, okay, it did feel really scary in some moments, but looking back, yeah, that's fine. Like it actually worked out just fine. Um, I did get to meet up with other artists though, and have like, strengthen relationships, if you will. So that was super awesome. And then I did continue, partnering up with other creatives and getting assistance as needed, and delegating as much as possible. Or maybe not as much as possible, but let's call it increased delegation, especially with some tasks I wanted to be able to delegate a little bit more in terms of administrative tasks, and I was able to do that. So check, check. Bookkeeping, I just, at the time of this recording at the end of the year, like just started that part of it. So it still counts as a 2024 thing that I'm going to count as a win that I did steps towards that. So check, check. And then things like photography, I did have a photographer come out and do some updates in terms of some of the photos and things that I needed for mural presentations, which more on that on the 2025 episode. But yeah, some of these main pillars, if you will, rest again, didn't have a choice, but there was there. A lot of the pillars that I established or overarching goals, let's call it that, that I established as part of my theme of focused growth did take place. So very excited about that. Again, not in the same volume for these different things as I would have liked on all of them. But again, that was fine. That was actually, yeah, it actually worked out. So I can't complain. How about you, Jackie?
Yeah, so again, also looking at 2023 to start, my words for 2023 were exploration and expansion. To where then in 2024, I started pivoting and my word was flexibility. And oh my goodness, that came to life way more than I probably even expected. So from a physical standpoint, I wanted to incorporate yoga and changing up my workouts. So I definitely did that with running and weightlifting and line dancing now. That was definitely something I did not plan on doing this year, but I absolutely love the flexibility of it in my schedule. Um, Art making wise, definitely was flexible in that I didn't really put my foot on the gas like I had planned from an art making standpoint. And I'm still ideating on what my work will be looking like moving forward, but I'm kind of remaining flexible with those income streams and what my final art output looks like, right? I think another way I embrace flexibility this year was in my physical studio space, really embracing the ability to change my physical space to adapt to whatever my focus is creatively, which I encourage all of our listeners to do too, especially towards the end of the year, of really recognizing like, does my physical space still serve me and what I need it to do? And if not, what can I change? So for me, over the past few weeks, I've kind of made improvements to my physical space to create what I call like studio night mode, where I have a lot of LED lights. I turn off the overhead lights. I have lamps and colored lights throughout my studio space that I find really energizing for making work in the evenings. Otherwise, I just have no creative drive in the evenings, especially if I'm like sitting under these like overhead lights that are super, super bright. I need more like intimate grounding space. So I'm glad I was able to be flexible with my physical space and do that. And then the third way that I think flexibility has really come to the surface this year and probably the most impactful was, of course, being a full-time artist now, having total flexibility in my schedule. And I think the biggest part of that too is not even just the schedule, but also the mindset shift of like following that energy of doing what feels good in the moment for me, my mental health, but also the work that I'm making. Um, Going outside, going to the studio, taking a day off when I need it, and really changing that relationship that I have with the concept of work or working. If you're self-employed, I'm sure you can definitely relate to that. It's almost the deprogramming of the corporate structure of, okay, well, it's 9 o'clock, so you quote unquote have to be working. Or, okay, it's 4 p.m., you have to keep working until 5. And really, that flexibility of my mindset, while also still staying focused and diligent about timelines and structured. So that's been a big adjustment of flexibility, making my own schedule, but loving it as a huge challenge and also recognizing it as a privilege, having built my business over the past few years, to where that can be my current main income stream. So I don't know how long that will last, if I will be continuing to be self-employed forever, but I'm enjoying 2024, this time of being able to embrace that as my primary income as we wrap up the year. But real quick before we go, let's wrap it up with Adriana. What are you most proud of yourself for this year and why?
I'd have to say not quitting, even though there were times where I definitely had giant question marks hanging above my head. Um, Being able to say, yeah, the injury is a setback. Yes, I have to pare down some of my goals, but I'm not giving up on my dream to be a self-employed artist, you know? Again, I did have some moments of doubt. I did have moments of like, well, what kind of other job could I get? You know, online job, because again, mobility was an issue for a while. So what kind of other job can I get? Could it be art adjacent, please? You know, kind of situation. So there were some scary moments there, but I'd have to say it's like the biggest thing that I was proud of was just literally just hanging on, you know, to the nail. Like you can't drag me back to corporate. I refuse. I can't do it. I mean, I can. I could. I did enjoy many things of it. But honestly, I like working for myself a lot better than I like working for other people, other than clients. I do love working with clients, but that's different than working for a corporation. I'd rather have my own. So I did take some of that energy and some of that focus on creating my team, and expanding my team. And you know, the amount of things that I could delegate and things like that. So I'm actually like really proud of being able to say, okay, if I can't put my energy in these different areas or put the same level of attention to them or time investment into them, what else can I put it into regardless of what I'm going through right now? Like one of the things that I did, which you know, might as well mention now, is like I invested in some, and some training for different parts of my business and different parts of like how to expand the sales for murals, you know, or the sales efforts, I should say. So, more on that on the 2025 episode. But yeah, there was a lot of that of, okay, fine, if I can't do X, Y, and Z, what else can I do? And just going for it, honestly. I mean, that's one thing we talk about a lot. That's one thing that I definitely have is a big theme in my work anyways. And through my artwork, I was able to explore a lot of these things too, once I could paint again. That idea of being resilient, being determined, being able to say, okay, I stumbled, but I'm gonna get back up, dust myself off, and keep going. You know, like what else are you gonna do? Just sit there in misery? Like, no thanks. I can't do that. I mean, yes, I'll have a good cry. We're not saying push down your feelings. Like, we're not saying that. And I did have the support of a mental therapist, you know, a mental health professional, to help me out navigate some of those things and the love and support of my family and friends. So that was huge. But at the end of the day, you can have all those things in place. It still takes you to make those steps. Like they can help you and support you, but you still got to do the thing. You still got to do the work. So yeah, I'm proud of myself for like I said, getting back up and just being like, okay, let's put the boxing gloves back on and just, you know, fight through this thing. And yeah, we ain't stopping. Not if I can help it. Not on my watch. How about you, Jackie?
Yeah, so looking back overall 2024, I think it sounds very abstract, but I kind of touched on it throughout today's episode. I think I'm most proud of myself for just like leaning into being more human this year. The second half of 2024 especially was really heavy with some like pretty big life changes in terms of losing corporate job, personal life changes and connections that I won't really go into, but even the first half of the year of prioritizing my personal life time over time working, which if you're a workaholic, you might be able to relate to that of, okay, prioritizing a weekend trip with friends over an art market, or prioritizing, you know what, I've been in the studio for several hours. I am going to stop and go out to dinner with friends and have a movie night over this abstract deadline that I've set for myself. Like recognizing those priority shifts. And when times did get tough with big challenges and setbacks that were not in my control, you just kind of have to roll with the punches in life sometimes. I think I'm really proud of myself for really sitting in my feelings and not instantly going to solution mode or, okay, I have to get over this mode. I allowed myself that time to be like, you know what? Things are really tough right now, and it's okay for them just to be tough. End of sentence. I know it's not going to be like that forever. I know that we will move past this or grow from it, hopefully, fingers crossed, as time goes on. But just acknowledging that like life is hard sometimes and it sucks, and it's okay to feel that, because that's something that I've really struggled with in the past. Being able to like sit in the chapter and journal and cry and really just reflect, prioritize relationships over work, and recognizing the importance of doing things just for fun, which again may sound like silly and stupid to some of our listeners, but recognizing as like especially a type A goal focused person that you can do things in life just for the sake of having fun and doing them. There don't have to be these like larger goals or a skill that you're developing or whatever. Inevitably there will be, but oh, this is just something that's fun and makes me happy, so I'm going to do it. End of sentence. So making more time to be human is kind of been my theme for 2024. And just recognizing that life doesn't have to be that serious all the time, especially when life does get very heavy. It's a good reminder of doing things just for the moment and just for the sake of being human. That's all we can do.
Yeah. Okay. It's the only thing we can take with us is our experiences. So there you go. Love it. Well, remember, listeners, if you want to look back at 2024 and want to plan ahead for 2025, highly recommend it, especially while everybody's channeling the whole goal energy. I mean, this is a great time to do it. Although you can do this any time of the year, especially if you're listening to this and it's like summer. Yes, you can still do this. Thank you very much. But head on over to levelupartist.com and download the Level Up Your Year PDF and training module today to get working on that. That's it. We're going to go ahead and wrap up today's conversation, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
As always, our blog will be linked in today's show notes, where you will find episode notes and links to all of our other podcast episodes.
If you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share your feedback, or have a question you would like for us to answer on the podcast, you can reach us through social media. I'm at May Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. And if you want to follow the podcast, we're at Level Up Artist on Instagram.
Also, once again, remember to go to levelupartist.com to get immediate access to templates, resources, and course modules to level up your creative career today.
Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.